Disney Star Wars The Acolyte from Disney Plus was a total failure, but some of the stars of the show just cannot seem to let go. For what few fans or people out there in general actually bothered to watch that trash fire, the actors from that show seem to talk about it like it's still a thing. Jodie Turner-Smith now lamenting the fact that the Walt Disney Company and Lucasfilm didn't run to their aid amidst quote-unquote racist backlash from toxic fans. You know, the same old story. The same run around the block, the same beating of the same dead horse. In fact, at this point, we're so close to Halloween that many folks out there may be forgiven for thinking that some of these Acolyte stars, by doing this, well, it's tantamount to engaging in necrophilia. Renegade Online. I'll pull this story up now because I think this is a great piece to talk about and get thoughts on. You mentioned earlier the budgets of things like Star Wars and Marvel and how just off the scale they are compared to virtually everything else. Part of that has to do, I think, with the fact that the Walt Disney Company has been an absolutely terrible steward of investor capital. They blow through money and usually making very bad things. We had a story earlier this week. I don't know if what's the last Marvel movie that you watched?
I don't think I've watched one since Endgame.
Endgame. So you're like all the rest of us.
Yeah.
So Ant-Man 3 and the Marvels, Captain Marvel, the second Captain Marvel movie, right? Nobody knows what they are. Nobody watched them. Those two movies combined, these were since Endgame, production cost of $760 million. That was before the studio spent a dime advertising, marketing, global P&A.
Which is double that. It's at least the same again or double.
Yeah, in many cases it can be. I know Disney started pulling back on some of these things. So, I mean, these are giant losers. And Disney apparently did the same thing here with, speaking of Star Wars, The Acolyte, which is the show that we can never seem to stop being able to talk about because the cast won't let it go. And to your point here, Matthew, Jodie Turner-Smith, who was one of the principal actresses in the show, claims that the Walt Disney Company didn't have her back amid online, quote, racism and bullshit from toxic fans. And this went on from the get-go. And if you haven't seen this clip, I want to remind folks, well, I'll play this in a minute when I get to this, but I think this is interesting here because I don't know why they're still talking about it. They're still very upset about this. They are still very mad this show failed miserably, was almost instantly canceled, not renewed for season 2, because it was a very poorly created show. It was just bad. It was bad writing.
Well, I can tell you, by the way, I can tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you why. All right, so why they're going on about it. So this is just in my opinion. All right, in my experience. So firstly, nobody cared about Lando Calrissian. There was never any racism towards one of the most beloved characters in Star Wars history. Mm-hmm. There was never any issue with Carl Weathers, right? And nobody cared.
Nope.
It's when they started injecting up. Let me step back a second to talk about truth, right? Because this is really important because it goes back to you talking about the balkanization of groups, which is, by the way, absolutely intentional politically. You know, we spoke about this a little bit before we came on, is that they won't leave us alone politically, right? And it's seeped into absolutely everything, right? So separate into different groups, which makes, number one, people easier to control, right? We all know that. Divide and conquer. It's as old as the hills, you know, as they say.
Sun Tzu's The Art of War. I mean, all the way back to that.
All the way back to that. We know,
Yeah.
and we know Cloud and Pivot, we know the socialist and communist tactics is to do this, is to fracture people and then point them at each other there's no unity, so the people in charge don't get called on their BS, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that one of my friends, who's, I won't say what college he's at, but he's a professor of philosophy, he said to me that the best students he has are screenwriters. The best students in the philosophy class are screenwriters. Why? Because as an actor and as a writer, you should be always pursuing the truth. Always pursuing the truth, right? If you pursue the truth, we recognize the truth as an audience. We relate to it. We understand issues and conflicts that we have within ourselves and within certain situations, because that's what it is, right? It's like a person is in a certain situation, there is something going on. How do they react to that situation, and how does it lead to another series of events, right? And a lot of the time, like if you go back to, sorry to bore you guys, if you go back to Bertolt Brecht, who was a playwright and a director back in the 30s, what he did was he would put on theater shows, and he would make sure everybody knows, don't get involved in the show. Like, don't get swept away in the show. I want you to see the series of decisions that happened that led to these consequences, right? So as a writer, and I've wrote a few movies, sold movies, you have to go and follow the truth. And what we're having right now is people that are delusional, right? They aren't thinking correctly. And that's kind of like a very sanitized version of what I really should say about them.
No,
but
I got it. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like this is this. Well, actually, that isn't that. It's this. And we're, normal people are going, hang on a minute, like that's not true. So what happens is these people get promoted into positions of power. So their dysfunction and their illogical thinking and their lack of, by the way, it comes from my truth. This is my truth, right? Which is
right,
one
not
of the
the
most,
truth, my truth.
it's
right.
one of the most pernicious things.
Yeah.
Right. So if you've got my truth, that doesn't mean there is the truth. So what you have is a bunch of truths, and what might be true for you is not true for me, and all this kind of stuff. So what you get is a mess. You get this like jumbled mess. And then that's put out as product. Right. So you can't, as an actor, truly sit in there and go, hang on a second, like I'm trying to figure this out, because like I always look at scripts as like treasure maps, right? And I've got to figure out, it's my job not to, the line in Tropic Thunder, I don't read the script reads me, right? That's a joke at that, right? Like I'm not gonna work hard to figure out what the writer was trying to do here. And so you got to try and figure it out, right? You got to try and figure out why the character does this, where he's going, and if it fits. So what you have is you have dysfunctional people making dysfunctional product, bringing other people in, telling them they're awesome, they're the greatest thing ever, and they can't possibly self-reflect and think that they've done anything wrong, right? There's no like, oh, well, it might not have been good. The actors are probably going, well, it wasn't me. It was the audience, because they can't really talk to Disney. They can't say it's Disney. Disney messed it up, because they won't get hired again. Right. So they'll go, it's the audience. And I'm sure the director's going, it's the actor, or, it's the screenwriter. And it's like a circular firing squad. They're all looking for somebody else to blame, because they have no ownership, because they can't possibly be wrong.
I think, in many respects right there, I think you're dead on the money. The only thing I'd say about Disney, and they may be unique in that situation. Disney is, and we've talked about this before, the audience knows what I'm about to say. Disney is a bit of an oddball to some respects, because while I think that certainly other major studios, the Paramounts, the Warner Brothers, the Sony Pictures, Universal, Comcast, they're certainly not immune from some of these ridiculous DEI practices. And it's not just about what actors or directors they hire. This goes very deep into the corporate structure. It's a very, very deeply driven in cancer to a degree. It's not just what you see on the screen, and that's not what it's about. But the issue is at Disney, it's everybody's on board with this, right? Like with the Acolyte, it was, we're going to hire this showrunner, Leslie Headland. why? What does she have to do with Star Wars? Well, the head of Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, feels like she's another strong whammon or something like this. Never mind the fact that she was Harvey Weinstein's personal, former assistant that God knows what she witnessed. It's
you can't
amazing.
Believe it, can you? You cannot believe it when you think about it.
I cannot believe, Matthew, the number of interviews that Leslie Headland has had in the last several years for the projects that she's worked on, be it the Acolyte or Russian Doll, and she's never gotten one damn
asked.
question.
Never been asked,
one
right?
question about Harvey the whole time. Not one. But she's getting gigs like they're going out of style. And this was a show at Disney they spent $300 million on. So, I mean, I think, and we've played the clips here, and the audience, and you've probably seen them too, the interviews with Leslie Headland and the star of the show, Amanda Stenberg, talking about how gay the show is going to be. It's going to be the gayest Star Wars ever, and all kind of fun stuff. And now, and we're going to go back to this article, but now that, the show has been a massive failure, it was the toxic male Star Wars fans. The same people that Kathleen Kennedy has been complaining about since 2015 when the first movie after Disney bought it came out. And then things started going sharply downhill by 2017 when they insulted all of the male characters and the male heroes that we all grew up with.
Yeah.
And they wonder why. It's like, well, we know Star Wars is still a very male-dominated audience. Then why don't you cater to them? For those of the people out there that haven't seen it, Jodie Turner-Smith, who played Mother Anastasia, one of the lesbian space witches from The Acolyte, the new Star Wars show, who she and her lesbian lover made a baby together, a Force baby, something. So yeah, that's where we are in Star Wars now, Matthew. I'm sure you didn't watch it like we didn't. Well, no. I did, because I'd been following the production of this show for nearly 2 years. So I kind of felt, well, I gotta.
You took one for the team, didn't you?
I took one for the team on this one. I absolutely did.
But it's 300 minutes. This is what I'm trying to say. Whenever I talk, and I've been going on and on, I'm sure you've seen them for those that have actually, follow me on the other social media. Mm-hmm. What I've been saying on X for the past few weeks now is, hey, listen, come and follow me over here. Mm-hmm. Right? Come and follow me on YouTube. I've got a YouTube channel. Come and follow me over here. Yeah, and there's a reason for that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a reason for that. And the reason is I want to see how engaged people are, because these people watch that kind of stuff, right? And it sways them. So what you got to remember is you have a few people, very, very few people, squeaky wheels.
Yep.
Right? But they have a giant megaphone. Like it's just massive. And here's the other thing. This is the thing that is the most insidious. I want everyone watching to understand this. Mm-hmm. When I was doing Rambo, Stallone turned to me. It's kind of a funny story. He turned around to me and he goes, "Remember, this is forever." And I went, "Oh, but it is forever."
Yeah.
Those movies, The Acolyte is forever. The Marvels is forever. So you got to understand that they're playing the long game, right? They're looking and they want, even if it all goes away, and you want your kids to watch Bluey because Bluey's awesome, right? And one day your kids are watching Bluey on Disney Plus, and they come onto The Acolyte, and then they get stuff that you don't want them to see, because it's never going away, right? It's always going to be there. So it doesn't matter.
So here we go. I kind of want to get back to this to just kind of dovetail into what Matthew Marsden was talking about. Jodie Turner-Smith claiming that Disney didn't have her back, right? She's screaming about racism and BS from quote-unquote toxic fans, hyper-conservative bigotry and vitriol, prejudice, all the Amanda Stenberg claims and all this nonsense. Now, like Matthew was talking about, they're going to point the fingers back at Disney. You didn't have my back. You didn't have my back. Yeah, apart from the $300 million they spent on your show, I guess. But in a recent interview with Glamour UK, she says, quote, "They've got to stop doing this," meaning Disney, "where they don't say anything when people are getting effing dogpiled on the internet with racism and bull crap." She said of Disney's silence, "It's just not fair to to not say anything, it's really unfair. Turner Smith added, quote, it would just be nice if the people that have all the money, whether that be Disney or any studio, were showing their support and putting their feet down. Say this is unacceptable, and you're not a fan if you do this. Well, I got news. There have been Disney and their bots out there that have done this, although the problem is it's all for naught, okay? They're all for naught because it doesn't matter. The audience is the audience, and I've always talked about this with people. It does not matter why you think your audience is not showing up, or if you're upset with your audience for not showing up over your own misconception of whatever perceived reason you think they're not showing up. Well, they're not watching it because they're racist. They're not watching it because of this. I was like, well, here's the deal. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. They're your audience. You have one of two options. You can either make a product that they're going to enjoy, or you can make a product that they are not going to watch and you lose money. It really is just that simple. Now, to be clear, the Star Wars audience is not a bunch of racists or bigots or homophobes or whatever the hell else they want to throw out there. The audience for Star Wars is fed up. They're tired, and frankly, most of them are gone because Disney can't make good products. That's it. So if Jodie Turner-Smith wants to ask Disney to please make things worse, go ahead and do it. But I think Disney at this point, probably, if anything, we could say that they're smart for shutting up and walking away. Unfortunately, the actors are not doing this. Okay, they just want to keep plodding away. The actress bet that Disney wouldn't see, quote, any money leave if they made a, quote, really big statement speaking out about the matter. She noted how people of color, quote, especially black people, make up a large percentage of consumer buying power. Quote, they might find that it's actually more lucrative for them, but everyone's using woke like it's a dirty word, she continued. It is. It is. It is a dirty word because what it means is doing stupid things like this that are antithetical to good business practices, right? Meaning making a show, in this case, a Star Wars show that is actually going to be widely appealing to the most fans of Star Wars possible, and specifically the fans that have historically spent a ton of money. Tens of billions of dollars over the course of decades. This is a very simple business proposition. Disney might say, or Kathleen Kennedy, or Jodie Turner-Smith, or Amanda Stenberg might want to sit there and say, well, but we need more of this in Star Wars, and we need more of that in Star Wars, and we don't need the Skywalkers. We don't need to keep having white male saviors and all this, so we need to get rid of Luke and get rid of Han. You can say that all you want. And you can say that people don't like that because they're racist, which isn't true. It's just that they like Luke and Han. The problem is it doesn't matter. They don't like it. They don't want it. They don't want you to do that. And when you do that, you are making a conscious decision to lose money. Period. We are past the point of debate on this. So, Ms. Smith, with all due respect, and look, I do mean with all due respect, and I'm not being sarcastic here, she actually probably, of everybody in that show, apart from Lee Jung-jae, probably was the most competent actress or actor in the show. I didn't care much for her character. The story was trash, and it will be forgotten in 2 months. But her performance, with what little she had to work with in certain scenes, I thought was good. But that doesn't assuage the fact that the show was a dumpster fire, and her going out on a limb like this, screaming about racism and all this, you need to let this show go. That's it. Jodie, Amandla, Leslie, Kathy, whatever, let this show go. The best thing you could do is make sure that people have completely forgotten about this 2 months from now. If you're going to keep talking about this show, then I guarantee you the rest of your careers are just not going to go much anywhere else. Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.